I told my husband I regretted marrying him at 21, and everyone thinks he overreacted. They see a heartless man abandoning his young wife over one honest sentence. What they don't understand is that I engineered every second of his response, calculated each word for maximum damage, and still lost control of the outcome. My friends call his actions cruel, but they don't know I was having an affair. My family says his silence is abusive, but they haven't seen the email I sent his boss 3 days before the fight. By the time you finish reading this, you'll know exactly why a man who once carried me over a threshold didn't even carry our conversation past the kitchen counter. Growing up, I was the girl who had her wedding colors picked out before she had her first period. While other teenagers rebelled with piercings and bad grades, I rebelled by planning the perfect life. Liam proposed the summer after I graduated university, kneeling on the same beach where we'd shared our first kiss at 17. I said yes before he finished the question, my entire Pinterest board finally materializing into 3 carrots and a promise. My mother cried happy tears. His parents toasted to soulmates. I posted the ring with the caption Mrs. Carter sounds perfect. For the first year, it was perfect. We bought a townhouse in the suburbs, adopted a rescue pit bull named Duke, and hosted game nights where our friends got tipsy on cheap wine and told us we were couple goals. But by year 3, I was 24 going on 40, and the weight of forever started pressing against my ribs. I began leaving the house without my ring, telling myself my fingers were swollen. Marcus slid into my DMs on a Tuesday. He was a photographer from my hometown who'd once taken my senior portraits, 7 years older and still single with a motorcycle and a jawline that could cut glass. His message was innocent enough. Saw you got married, beautiful as ever, but I responded within minutes, my thumbs flying across the screen with a desperation I didn't recognize. We started with nostalgia, graduated to daily check-ins, and by month 2, I was meeting him for creative brainstorming sessions at a coffee shop 3 towns over where nobody knew my married name. I told myself it was harmless, that loneliness wasn't betrayal, that Marcus understood a side of me Liam had never bothered to explore. When Liam asked why I kept smiling at my phone during our Netflix nights, I showed him a meme about dogs and pretended I was laughing at that. The truth burned a hole in my pocket where my secret phone lived. One afternoon, while Marcus was adjusting his lens, his hand brushed my thigh and I didn't move away. That night, I initiated sex with Liam for the first time in months, trying to scrub the guilt from my skin with his familiar touch. It didn't work. Afterward, I stared at the ceiling and wondered if this was how I would die, slowly, in a bed I'd chosen at 21, next to a man who still called me his best friend. Then I did something I still can't excuse. I told my mother Liam had become controlling. When she pressed for details, I manufactured them. He didn't like my short skirts anymore. He questioned my spending. He wanted to know where I was at all times. None of it was true, but my mother believed every syllable. She started calling him that boy instead of your husband, her voice tight with protective fury. Liam noticed the shift, asked why my mother had stopped answering his calls, and I told him she was going through menopause and taking it out on everyone. He bought her flowers. She threw them in the trash and sent me a picture of the carnage. The collateral damage was stacking up and I kept loading the gun. My best friend Sarah cornered me at brunch, her eyes narrowed over her mimosa. You've been different, Riley. Distant. Is everything okay with you and Liam? I almost confessed right there, almost let the truth spill onto the table like syrup. Instead, I told her I was feeling suffocated, that marriage had turned into a cage I hadn't realized I'd walked into. She nodded sympathetically, having divorced her own college sweetheart 2 years prior, and said, 21 is too young to know who you'll be at 30. Her words became my armor. I started repeating them to anyone who would listen, carving out a narrative where I was the victim of youthful naivety rather than a woman actively choosing destruction. The first time Marcus kissed me, we were in his studio after a shoot, his camera still clicking on timer mode in the background. I tasted whiskey and regret, but I kissed back harder. Afterward, I opened a secret bank account. Just in case, I told myself, women need security. I transferred $200 from our joint savings every week, small enough that Liam wouldn't notice, large enough that by month 3 I had nearly $3,000 stashed away. I told myself it was my escape fund, my safety net, my ticket back to myself. In reality, it was the first brick in the wall I was building between me and the man who still left love notes in my lunch bag. Then I made my first irreversible mistake. Liam got a promotion at his accounting firm, senior partner, corner office, the whole 9 yards. I should have been proud. Instead, I was terrified. More money meant more stability, more ties, more reasons to stay. So when I found out his firm was doing a background check on him, I sent an anonymous email from a burner account. Thought you should know about Liam Carter's inappropriate relationships with female clients. Ask him about the intern last summer. There was no intern. There was no affair. But there was enough smoke to make anyone investigate fire. I hit send at 2:47 a.m., my hands shaking so hard I had to type the password 3 times. The next day, Liam mentioned the promotion was taking longer than expected, but he wasn't worried. I kissed his cheek and said, they'd be lucky to have you. The duplicity was becoming second nature, like breathing underwater. 2 weeks later, Marcus started pulling away. He said his wife was getting suspicious, that he needed space, that this had gotten too complicated. I panicked. I'd built my entire escape plan around him, around the fantasy of riding off into the sunset on his motorcycle, our middle fingers raised to suburbia. If he left, I'd be stuck. So I did what any desperate woman would do. I doubled down on the abuse narrative. I sent him screenshots of fake text messages I created using a spoofing app, messages from Liam that called me worthless, told me I was lucky anyone wanted me, threatened to make sure I left with nothing. Marcus's responses grew more urgent, more protective. We need to get you out, he texted. Soon. I told him I was planning to ask for a divorce. I told him I had money saved. I told him I loved him, and for a moment I almost believed it. The night before the fight, I sent Liam's boss another email. This one included details only someone close to him would know: his frequent lunches with the female partner, his unusual expense reports, his habit of working late alone with the door closed. All innocent things I twisted into something sinister. I added a line at the end: his wife deserves to know who he really is. Then I forwarded the entire thread to my own email, printed it, and slipped it into my mother's mailbox with a note in case something happens to me. I was manufacturing evidence of a crime that didn't exist, building a case against the man who still reached for my hand in his sleep. The fight itself was supposed to be controlled. I had it scripted in my head. I'd say I regretted marrying young. He'd apologize for being distant. I'd cry about feeling lost. He'd promise to try harder. Instead, when the words left my mouth, they carried the weight of every lie I'd told over the past 6 months. I regret marrying so young, Liam. I feel like I threw away my 20s. He stood at the kitchen sink, a dish towel in his hands, and went completely still. The kind of stillness that comes before a building implodes. Say that again, he said, his voice so quiet I almost didn't hear it. I just think we were too young to know. Do you regret me? He interrupted, turning to face me. His eyes were the same color they'd been when he was 17, but there was something new behind them. Something final. Not the timing. Not the age, me. I should have backpedaled, should have softened the blow. But I'd spent months crafting a narrative where I was the victim, and victims don't apologize for their truth. I regret all of it, I said, and the lie tasted like freedom. This whole marriage feels like a mistake I made because I didn't know who I was. Nodded once, the way people do when they've just solved a difficult equation. Then he walked to our bedroom, pulled a suitcase from the closet, and began packing methodically. I stood in the doorway, a script of apologies forming on my tongue, but I couldn't make my mouth move. This wasn't the plan. He was supposed to fight for me, beg me to stay, promise to change. Where are you going? I finally managed. To my mother's, he said, not looking at me. I'll send someone for the rest tomorrow. You're just leaving. Over one sentence. He zipped the suitcase, the sound loud in the quiet room. You didn't just say a sentence, Riley. You said the only thing I can't unhear. He walked past me, called for Duke, and left the keys on the entry table. I heard his car start, back out of the driveway, and disappear down our tree-lined street. I stood alone in our perfect suburban townhouse, surrounded by the life I'd curated, and realized I'd finally gotten what I wanted. It felt like drowning. 48 hours later, the divorce papers arrived via certified mail. I opened them with shaking hands, expecting the usual separation agreement, the kind that gives you time to rethink, to reconcile. Instead, it was a full filing for dissolution of marriage, citing irreconcilable differences, and my stomach dropped: financial misconduct. He'd discovered the secret account. The timing was impossible unless he'd known for weeks. My phone rang, and when I answered, a cold voice informed me our joint accounts were frozen pending investigation of marital asset misappropriation. My escape fund was gone. My regular checking balance showed $47.23. The credit cards were canceled. The mortgage payment auto-drafted in 3 days, and I had nothing. I called my mother, hysterical, and she listened to my sobs for exactly 40 seconds before asking Riley, "Did you lie to me about Liam?" The question landed like a slap. I sputtered denials, but she'd already spoken to him. He'd shown up at her house with flowers and bank statements with love notes I'd written him 3 months ago and the email his boss had forwarded him, the anonymous one, the one I'd written. He'd known everything. My mother hung up on me. Sarah texted, "What the hell did you do?" Followed quickly by, "Liam just left here. He knows, Riley. He knows." The world began telescoping inward. I tried to call Marcus, but my number was blocked. I drove to his studio, but the lights were off. I went to his house, and a woman I'd never met answered the door. His wife. She called me a homewrecker and threatened to call the police if I ever came back. I stood on the porch, my perfect plan in tatters, and realized I'd been the supporting character in someone else's cautionary tale. 3 days after the papers arrived, Liam's best friend knocked on my door. He handed me a box, my things from Liam's mother's house where he'd been staying, and a letter. I opened it expecting rage, expecting threats. Instead, I found 2 sentences written in Liam's neat accountant's handwriting. "I know about Marcus. I know about the emails. I hope it was worth it." The ground disintegrated beneath my feet. He'd known about Marcus for weeks. He'd let me continue, let me dig my own grave, and when I handed him the shovel with my confession, he'd buried me in it. I'd spent 6 months believing I was the architect of my escape, but I'd been building my own prison the entire time. Then came the next wave. His firm suspended him pending investigation into the anonymous allegations. The partner he'd been mentoring, my fabricated inappropriate relationship, was a 60-year-old grandmother who'd taken him under her wing after his father died. She called me not to yell, but to cry, asking why I'd tried to destroy a good man's reputation. I had no answer that didn't make me sound like the villain I was. The social fallout was nuclear. Our mutual friends didn't just take his side, they erased me. I was removed from group chats, blocked on every platform, deleted from photo albums like I'd never existed. Sarah was the last to go, sending me a final text: "You didn't just cheat, Riley. You tried to ruin him. That's not a mistake. That's a choice." I stared at the words until they blurred, wanting to defend myself, wanting to explain about being 21 and scared, but even I knew that excuse had expired. My family was next. My father, who'd walked me down the aisle just 3 years ago, left a voicemail saying I wasn't welcome in their home until I got my head straight. My sister changed her locks. My aunt, who'd given us the down payment for our townhouse, sent a letter from her lawyer demanding repayment of the gift, now that the marriage was dissolving due to my fraudulent behavior. I was 24 and completely, utterly alone. The bank foreclosed on the townhouse. I moved into a studio apartment above a Chinese restaurant that smelled like grease and regret. My secret account was liquidated and returned to the marital assets, minus the legal fees I'd incurred trying to fight the freeze. I got a job at a coffee shop, my business degree useless against the stain of what I'd done. Customers asked why someone with my education was steaming milk for minimum wage, and I told them I'd made some mistakes. The understatement of the century. 6 months after that night in the kitchen, I saw Liam's engagement announcement. He'd met someone at his new firm. He'd transferred states to escape the rumors I'd started, and she was beaming in the photo, her hand on his chest, his smile the same one I'd seen in our wedding pictures. The comments were full of congratulations from people who'd once celebrated us, people who now referred to me as that phase or his first mistake. I sat in my shoebox apartment, my phone glowing in the dark, and realized the only person I'd managed to divorce was myself, from the person I could have been. I started this confession because someone sent me that engagement photo with the message, "You did this." And I did. Not by saying I regretted marrying young, but by believing that regret gave me permission to burn everything down. I thought freedom meant escape, meant running towards something new and shiny. I didn't understand that freedom means staying when it's hard, choosing the same person even when you're not sure who you are. I was 21 when I made vows I didn't understand, but I was 24 when I broke them in ways that can't be fixed. So here I am, working a job that barely covers rent, with a credit score in the toilet and a reputation that precedes me in all the wrong ways. Liam is happy. Marcus is back with his wife. And I'm left with the ashes of a life I torched because I confused boredom with unhappiness, because I thought grass was greener on the other side, when really it was just painted concrete. People ask if I regret what I did. The honest answer is that I regret the person I was when I did it. But that person was me. Not a child, not a victim of circumstance, Just a woman who chose destruction over discomfort, who weaponized her own unhappiness until it became a bullet that ricocheted and struck her own heart. So go ahead, tell me I'm the villain. Tell me I'm a stupid kid who ruined her life. Tell me whatever helps you sleep at night, whatever makes this story make sense. But remember this: I told him I regretted marrying young because I wanted to hurt him, and he heard me. He just didn't stick around to hear the rest of the lies. He saved himself and left me to drown in the truth. Is that justice? Is that cruelty? Or is that just what happens when you mistake a life for a dress you can return when the trend passes? I still don't know. But I know this: I'll never say those words again. Not to anyone. Because some confessions can't be taken back, and some regrets are the only honest thing you have left.